Welcome to CQ Minds, a video podcast where we talk with delegates, personalities, students, alumni of CQ University. Today, in our show, we have a very special guest with us. He is an innovative and energetic business intelligence expert with more than 18 years of experience in education sector, including both private and government institutions in Australia and UK. Let's welcome Mr. Shehan Thampapillai, the Associate Vice Chancellor of CQUniversity, New South Wales. We know that Shehan, you are a leader, a business intelligent, and educational expert. So, can you tell us more about what was the journey from your childhood till where you are now?
Sure. It's great to be here, and I won't go through the whole journey because I'm 40 years old, so it will take a long time. But very quickly, I was born in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, and I lived in Colombo for about 7 years. And in 1985, my parents decided to migrate to Australia. So my mum and dad, my sister and I, we migrated to Perth in West Australia. And I grew up in a small town called Mandurah, which is about 1 hour south of Perth. I did all of my schooling in Western Australia, in Mandurah, of course, and then I went to university in Perth, and I did my undergraduate degree at Murdoch University and my postgraduate degree at Curtin University. I then started working at Murdoch University within international education, and that's really where my passion for education and international education was started. After working there for about 8 years, I moved to Cambridge in the UK, where I was involved in starting up a college for an organisation called Navitas, a private education provider. And after 3 years in the UK, I relocated back to Australia and moved to the East Coast, to Sydney. And after working at RMIT University, and I moved to CQUniversity in 2013. And since that time, I've been at this university and most recently taking on the role of the Associate Vice Chancellor.
You have been involved in so many institutions, and you also told that you came all the way from Sri Lanka. So what was the first feel when you first came into Australia?
Yeah, great question. Well, I was pretty young. I was 7 years old, and I came with my parents. And at that time, even though we had permanent residency, we were coming with this idea that we would just come to Australia for 2 years, and we would wait for the civil war in Sri Lanka to cease. However, as we all know, that civil war went on till 2009 and went on for about 40 years. And my parents, decided that actually it was much safer for us to remain in Australia. So I think in 2000, when we first came to Australia, it was almost exciting to come here. But then after a couple of years, when we decided that we weren't going home, it was probably a little bit sad. But I think Australia, for anyone who has lived here, even as a student or permanently, you realize that it's a very lucky country. So I guess I'm very grateful for the sacrifices that my parents made so that I've had the opportunity to grow up in Australia.
After you came into Australia, you became student, then you started working with Murdoch University. Now you are Associate Vice Chancellor of CQUniversity, New South Wales. So as talking about your post, what excites you being an Associate Vice Chancellor?
Yeah, I think what excites me about being the AVC is the ability to make positive change on the campus. And I feel that we have a great responsibility for meeting and even exceeding the expectations of the students who choose to study with us and the staff who choose to work with us. I think we also have a great opportunity as a university to provide education to the regional communities in New South Wales. A lot of the time, people who do live in regional parts of the country sometimes miss out on the opportunity to engage with quality education. So being the AVC, I think it allows me to play a positive role in the students' lives who choose to study with us here in Sydney, with the staff who choose to work with us here in Sydney, and also with us making a positive difference to the community and to New South Wales where we are based.
So Shehan, you started your journey as Deputy Director at CQUniversity.
That's right.
So what did it feel like to get promoted as an AVC of CQUniversity, New South Wales?
So, it's a great privilege, and I felt very lucky. And you think that there's only one AVC for the New South Wales region, and I've been lucky enough to be appointed as that AVC. So I guess, as Spider-Man said, with power comes great responsibility. And I feel that to a sense, that whilst I feel really lucky to have the role, I also feel that I need to take this opportunity to really make a positive difference.
So Mr. Shehan, as you are the AVC of CQUniversity, what changes have you made after being an AVC?
So I think, making changes and making differences at a university is a slow process. But I think one of the things that we have been able to do is engage more effectively with our students. And I think that is through supporting the student body on campus. So I think recently, late last year, we had a fantastic student event, which was a welcome student event, which Suraj, you I think were the MC for. But we as a campus were able to support that through funding the activity and showing support by our staff being involved in that. Earlier this week, there was a movie club where a group of students went to the movies for the first time, and that hadn't been done previously. And I think about a couple of weeks ago, one of our academics actually took students to Q&A, which is a really popular ABC show, so that they were able to, interact with industry experts, etc. And again, that was something that was funded and supported by the AVC team. So for me, I think what I have been able to do in the short term is to try to engage more effectively with students. What I want to do in the long term is, through the support of the wider university, is improve the facilities on the campus, provide students with better study facilities, better non-teaching spaces, which will allow them to, have an even more enjoyable time here on the campus.
So, at this stage, would you consider yourself to be a successful person?
I guess there's a lot of definitions for success, and not to sound corny, but I think when you come from a country like Sri Lanka, sometimes just living in a country where it's peaceful, where you don't have to worry about your safety, you don't have to necessarily worry about, class distinctions, etc., that can be deemed as being successful. But for me, when I look back on when I first graduated from university, if someone had told me that I would be the Associate Vice Chancellor of this university when I was 40, I would have been pretty happy with that. So I'm lucky enough to have a fantastic family. I have a beautiful wife, a young child who's 14 months old, a great French bulldog, which I really love. I'm very close with my mum and dad and my sister, and I have good relationships and good friendships. So I think all in all, I would say I'm successful. But if you were to compare me, for example, to a millionaire that, is driving a Ferrari down George Street, maybe then not as successful as that person.
As you consider yourself to be a successful person at some point, you might have encountered some kinds of obstacles to reach where you are now?
Sure. Yeah, and I think when you start working in any organization, I think you sometimes get to a point where, you have almost reached a bit of a ceiling of how much you can progress in that organization. And I think one of the obstacles that we all come up against is making that decision sometimes to move from one organization to another to give yourself career opportunities. And I've definitely felt that in the first organization I worked for, I got to a stage where I realized probably I wasn't going to be able to continue my career progression at that institution. So I chose that opportunity to go to the UK for for new opportunities. So I wouldn't necessarily say it is obstacles, but I think with everything we do in life, you come to a point where you realize maybe I can't go any further here. But I like to look at it not necessarily as an obstacle, but more an opportunity to actually expose myself and others to what the rest of the world has to offer. And I think sometimes we can get so consumed with thinking this is the only organization that exists, or Australia is the only country that I can work in. But with a truly global world, which we live in now, there are so many opportunities. So sometimes those obstacles open up fantastic doors, which you can explore and make use of.
That's true. So who do you look as your motivator? Who motivates you?
I'd probably say, I don't have to look too far to find motivation. And my motivation comes from my mum and dad. And I think more than anything, what motivates me about them is their selflessness. And what I mean by that is they were pretty much willing to sacrifice a really good life, which they had. My dad was a veterinary surgeon in Sri Lanka. My mum, really was a lady of leisure. We lived in a fantastic suburb in Sri Lanka, but they gave all of that up to come to Australia really for the betterment of my sister and I. And that first question you asked about being successful, I think sometimes being able to do things for other people without expecting something back in return, sometimes that is actually what success is all about. And when I look at my mother and father, I just see a willingness to work really hard, a willingness to prioritize education, and more than anything, putting their children before them. So they are my motivation, and they are, I think, if I could live my life half as well as they have lived theirs, I think I would be doing a great job.
What do you think your unique skill set or superpower is that has helped you to become successful?
Sure. I would probably say that my greatest strength is that I'm very personable. Yeah, I feel like I have a personality which is able to communicate with people broadly. So communicate with a student, with a senior executive at the university, speak to someone who is, say, an external professional, and I'm able to communicate with all of those people. And I think, this being successful in an organization, it's not always who's the smartest person or who's got the most number of degrees or which person went to the best university, but it's can you interact and communicate with people? Because if you're going to be a leader, people need to trust you, like you, and want to follow you. And that comes from your ability to communicate with people, be empathetic, and also be emotionally intelligent. So that, I guess, would be what I would say if I had to say a superpower would be. And I think also I think because of my undergraduate degree, which was in science, I'm quite analytical. So that has definitely helped me in my different roles by being able to use data to make decisions, which I think helps you to make good decisions.
Are there any kinds of books, tools that has helped you throughout your journey?
Yeah. So I recently saw an article that CEOs read 60 books a month or a year or a week or something like that. And I'm a terrible reader. So I guess I'm either not going to ever be a CEO, or maybe that is only part of the story of how you become a CEO. So probably no books that have really helped me, but I think probably the tools have been learning from other people. Yeah. And I think some of the things that I've learned from other people, which have really stood me in good stead, is time management. Yep. I think also about that realization that you can't always be liked by everyone all the time. And also that it's important to sort of have something that you stand for and that people know that that is what you stand for. And those three tools, I think, is what has really helped me. And those tools are not tools that I created myself, but rather that I have borrowed from other people who I admire, and who I've worked with in the past.
So imagine you could go back in time and live your moment once again, or could change something. What would it be?
I'd like to say that I don't have any regrets, but I definitely do have regrets. I think probably my final year of high school. Yeah. I think when you are in high school, you probably don't realize how important it is in regards to shaping what you do in the future. And I think probably I didn't maybe follow my passion right from the start. So, I think where my passion really lies is in business, in analytics, in that sort of area, in leadership, in that area. But I sort of did a science degree more because I think it was the expectation of my parents rather than my own interest. So if I could have my time again, it would probably be to have an honest conversation with my parents about what I was really passionate about, so that I would have sort of that theoretical background, which I would have been able to implement out sooner in the workplace. And also I think I probably would have done a lot better in my undergraduate degree at university if I had done that. So that's, I guess, more on that academic side of things. If it was sort of personally, I think being from a Sri Lankan culture, and it's probably for people who are watching this from a South Asian culture, they'll be able to appreciate this. We're not very good at sharing our emotions with people who we really love. So, we hardly ever tell our parents, etc., that we love them or we thank them for things that they have done for us. I think maybe the only time I really hugged my parents was at a birthday or when I was leaving the airport or arriving at an airport. So if there's one thing that I'd like to change, is probably just to have expressed my gratitude and my love to my parents more effectively than I have done, over the last 40 years.
You told us that you first studied science, then you changed to business.
That's right.
What changed your mind to go into a business school?
Sure. So I always enjoyed genetics at high school, and so I was really interested in going into biotechnology. And at that time, biotechnology was really breaking new ground in the area of science. And it really interested me. Genetics, biotechnology, microbiology, those areas were really of interest. And I think it also sort of met the expectations of my parents. So I did the course. I did that course, and then I actually started doing some an internship. And that internship was actually where I was working as a laboratory assistant. And I realized very quickly that my personality didn't really suit sometimes the work environment. I was quite talkative, I wanted to engage with people, but a lot of the students who were doing the internship were just very focused on what they were doing there, looking down the microscope, doing their agar plates, etc. And I started to realize, well, unless I'm willing to do my PhD and become a researcher, I'm always just going to be stuck in this laboratory environment. And maybe that was a bit narrow-minded at the time, but that didn't really excite me. So after I graduated, an opportunity came up at Murdoch University to work in the international office. And I was planning on only working in the international office until I got a real job as a scientist. But when I started working in the international office, getting to know international students, working within a university context, I really realized I love this, and my personality suited that as well. So I worked in that setting for about 5 years. And then after 5 years, I realized, you know what, it would be great to have some theoretical business background to help me with what I do in practice. So I started doing my MBA at Curtin University's Graduate School of Business, and then I completed my MBA, and I really found that interesting. I did so much better in my MBA than I did in my undergraduate degree, but most importantly, it has really been helpful in my career, and also giving me that theoretical knowledge to help me in what I do on a daily basis.
So when and how did you exactly started your career in an education sector?
So I started in 2000 as a marketing assistant. And, that was, I think at that time in that university, the most junior position. So I feel that, I've seen all of the things that need to be done to work in an international office, and it's also given me a great appreciation when I ask people to do things that I've been there before, and I have been asked as a staff member by people to pack a box, freight it to a education fair, etc. All the non-exciting things. I've done all the filing. Probably shows how old I am that they were still doing filing at that time and not saving things onto a computer.
Okay, so you started as a marketing assistant, then you joined your MBA.
That's correct. Okay. Yeah, that's right. And I think, the strength of an MBA is really to have work experience before you go into an MBA. And the reason I say that is when you are in an MBA class, and I think even maybe most postgraduate qualifications, the strength of your learning is often based on being able to apply something that's written in theory, like a change management theory, and be able to apply it to something that you have done in the workplace. And what you realize when you've got that work experience is that actually, yes, this might be correct as a theory, but there are so many nuances. Like if you work with people who are all from multicultural backgrounds, change management is very different than if you're working with people who are just all from one background, who all have the same mentality and the way they react to a particular change process. The other thing also in the MBA, I think especially, is that a lot of the learning you do in class is actually from your fellow classmates. So if they don't have that work experience, they can't contribute as much to the class discussion as they could if they had work experience and came from, a workplace often which has different challenges compared to other workplaces.
So Shehan, what is your motto of life?
My motto? I don't really have like a motto as such that I live my life on, but I think if there's something that I'm trying to achieve is to get to a stage where I'm content, I'm just content with what I have achieved, my family life, my social life, and I think that's always just a work in progress. So I think maybe a good motto could be just to continue to strive for what you want to achieve, but also once you get there, to realize actually maybe I should just stop and be happy where I am, because otherwise you are constantly chasing essentially like a rainbow. And the reason I say that is no matter how successful you are, no matter how happy you are, no matter how many, cars or degrees you have, there's always going to be someone else who has more cars than you, more degrees than you, more successful than you are, appears to be happier than you. And you can spend all your life just chasing rather than actually appreciating what you have. So my motto would maybe be to appreciate what you have, but to still stay ambitious.
As you have experience in different universities, institution in Australia, UK, what makes you so attached with CQ University?
Sure. So I think what's really unique about the university is that I think it's the vision of the university. And the vision of the university is about providing accessible education. And and we have, as a university, have done that through, when I think about international students, I think about, trying to keep our fees as affordable as possible, offering really strong scholarship programs. In 2018, we awarded, I think, $12.5 million worth of scholarships. And we have, different pathways for students to enter education. For our domestic students, we have, a really unique program called STEPS, which students can do free of charge to allow them to gain entry into an undergraduate degree at the university. So being accessible, I think, is what makes me really love this university. And the reason I love that is that education should not be something that is only available to a few. It should be available to everyone who aspires for higher education. And not everyone has the same opportunities as everybody else during high school, during their primary school. Their upbringings could have been very different. They have moved countries due to issues that are outside of their control. Their parents may not have been wealthy, or they haven't come from a background where education is, encouraged in the home life. So, if you just look at the traditional university model, you sort of had to come through a very traditional pathway to gain entry into a university. CQ University, on the other hand, allows students the opportunity to get access to education no matter what background they have come from, no matter what pathway they have traveled. And I think there is something really noble about that. And that makes me proud to be at CQ University. And I think when you have pride in the place you work at, that makes you want to stay because you're proud to be there. So that is probably the big difference, what has made me stay at CQ University for this long, and is something that I feel will keep me at the university for many more years.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, Mr. Shehan, at what time does your alarm normally rings?
I don't have an alarm, but I have a crying baby, and that he cries every morning at 5 o'clock.
What do you like, cooking or eating?
Eating.
Samsung or Apple?
Apple.
Home or workplace?
Oh, that's a tough one. Probably home.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Gold or silver?
Gold.
If you were given a chance to be someone, who would he or she be and why?
Probably Curtly Ambrose, the West Indian fast bowler.
Oh, why so?
I love cricket. I couldn't think of maybe a better place to play cricket than in the West Indies. And he was one of my idols growing up. And yeah, he just had a lot of swagger.
What are your hobbies?
Yeah, I would probably say, playing cricket, watching sport, and going out to eat.
How often do you go for shopping?
You know what? I actually don't go shopping that often, but when I do go shopping, I go pretty hard. So I'd probably say I go shopping maybe like once every couple of months for clothes.
If you had to spend $100, what would you spend on?
If I had to spend $100, probably a great tie.
Can you describe yourself just in a word?
Stylish.
What type of music do you like?
Gosh, I have a pretty eclectic mix of music, but love hip hop, love 90s R&B, and probably like folk music like Ben Harper. That would be what I'm into.
What color is a toothbrush?
I think it's white with green on it.
Okay. If you could be any flavor of ice cream, what flavor you would like to be?
Probably rum and raisin.
Okay.
And why? Because I just like rum and raisin ice cream.
Okay. Where is the worst place you could get stuck?
Yeah, I'd probably say standing in line in like the immigration line at an airport after a long haul flight. That is the worst.
Okay. Where would you go if you were invisible?
Invisible? My goodness. Good question. I'd probably go somewhere where I'm not meant to be. So, all the places that we don't have access to. So let's think of an example like say when I was playing cricket, I would love to have been invisible so I could go into the opposition teams, change rooms to hear what their tactics are, something like that.
Yeah. What is the thing you are most afraid of?
Yeah. Well, on a superficial level, probably lizards. I'm really, really afraid of lizards. But on maybe a more holistic level, what am I afraid of? Yeah, it's probably, losing someone I really love.
On scale 1 to 10, how cool are you?
See, these questions are difficult because you have to answer them so you don't sound like you have a big ego. So let's go for like an 8, a solid 8.
Okay. What is your dream car?
Probably the Porsche GT3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think of when I say fruits?
Yeah, mangosteens. No, mangosteens are my favorite.
That was like great conversation and fun activities that we had.
Great.
So, as we have we have grown with so many of students.
Yeah.
So as per our student listen to our podcast, or watch our videos, what suggestion that would you like to give to our listeners or viewers or every student?
Sure. Well, I think a couple of things. The first is, we are really privileged that students have chosen to study at CQU. So we want students to get the most out of this experience. So what I would encourage students to do is, if they do think of things that we could do to improve, not to just keep it to themselves, but to come and to see me, to see, the staff which we have on the campus and suggest those changes. Because as I said, we really want to respond to what students want rather than what we as staff think is best for students. So that would be the first thing. The second thing would be to realize how lucky we are that we have this opportunity to engage with education. I read an article recently where if you were to boil down everyone in this world to just 100 people, only 7 people would have gone to university. So, whilst we feel like, on this campus there's, over 3,000 students, that's a lot of people. What we don't realize is how fortunate we are that we have the ability to be educated and to go to university. So I really want students to make use of this opportunity and, realize that them sticking at this journey that they have started is not only going to be of benefit to them, but of benefit to their family, and most importantly, the people within their family who are going to come after them. So that would be my advice, my recommendation, and also my request for, the students who are studying here at CQU Sydney. Thank you, Suraj. CQ.